You have to find people that are resilient, people that can evolve over time, because the company a year ago is very different from the company today, and the company in a year from now will be and you need to find those individuals that are able to evolve and adapt. Real is an amazing combination of logic and heart. I think you have to develop a certain confidence in yourself, not necessarily the confidence that, hey, I'm really good at this, but the confidence to actually make mistakes. Agents come first in this company. Agents always come first, and we always do what's best for the agents, because if you do what's best for the agents, long term, you will benefit from that.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Broker's Desk. This is episode number 2. We started with Brian Gubernick, and now we're taking a massive leap across the pond. My good buddy Tamir Poleg is checking in from Tel Aviv, yeah?
Correct. Hi, everybody.
Israel, which is crazy. Yeah. So the goal of this podcast, Tamir, is really, historically speaking, in a real estate office, most people are used to going to the broker's desk to ask questions. Like, hey, what should I do here? What should I do there? In an increasingly virtual environment, Taylor and I felt like it'd be a good idea to create a virtual broker's desk and to tackle issues that agents are facing and to give them the support, at least in a virtual environment, that may help them, which is kind of the subject of, as Adriana and I were planning for this episode, I was like, I want to talk to Tamir about, and it's a play on words, getting real help in a digital world. Play on words there with real brokerage. But talk a little bit about kind of your history for people that don't know you. What was you've got a little bit of a unique story in the real estate space as far as how you got into real estate. You're a problem solver. And so talk a little bit about who is this Tamir.
Sure. And thanks for having me, Joe. It feels like everybody has a unique story on what led them to real estate, right? But yeah, I mean, after I completed my military service, I started working as a construction worker, which is kind of unusual. Spent about 2.5 years in construction, then got a degree in economics, then joined a startup in the year 2000, spent about 5 years with 2 different tech companies. And then in 2006, I went to Houston and started flipping homes, and then the market tanked, and I went heavily into multifamily investments when nobody else wanted to touch real estate in general. So I think I was kind of lucky, more than smart back then, and ended up selling that company in 2013. So in 2013, I found myself with a combination of technology experience, real estate background. I'm in love with real estate. This is the greatest industry in the world. But it's also very slow moving and pushing back on innovation. And I thought that there's just a better way of doing brokerage, and there's a better opportunity to just deliver more value to agents at a lower cost. And that's what we were trying to do ever since. So the journey started about 10 years ago. Obviously, we went into it quite naive and not knowing too much, which I think also helped us.
It's probably good. Yeah, it's probably a good thing.
Yeah, it's probably good. By the way, in the early days, the first few years, we didn't want to hire anyone with any brokerage experience. We just were so focused on creating something different, and we didn't want anyone who knows how the industry operates. And maybe that was a mistake, because you would need a balance all the time. But I mean, it's been a wonderful journey, and I think that it's in many ways just getting started, because we have so many exciting things that we're working on, and it feels like everything is kind of coming to fruition right now. So it'll be interesting to see the next 10 years.
So what are the differences? You and I have never even talked about this offline, but the Israeli real estate market, coming to the United States, there are a lot of similarities. Is it different? Like, are people doing, government-backed mortgages? Like, what is real estate in Israel?
It's an interesting question, because it's very different. Actually, the real estate outside of the US is very different from the US. So, right. In Israel, they don't have MLSs. Every party pays their own agent. So the seller's agent is paid by the seller. The buyer's agent is paid by the buyer. The mortgage industry is way back. So I think there are maybe 7 lenders in Israel, and they don't have any MBSs or kind of any sophisticated structures of that sort. but I think that, Israel can learn a lot from the US, and the US can learn a lot from other
Sure.
places in the world. And maybe now with all of those lawsuits going around with NAR,
Yeah.
maybe people will be looking at, okay, how is real estate transacted elsewhere? So I think that when you think about, or when you look at other countries, France, the UK, Australia, all of a sudden you realize that, maybe it's not the end of the world if we change kind of the way payments are handled in the transaction. But I think that generally speaking, real estate is somewhat behind in Israel compared to the US. And maybe I'll give you an
Mm.
interesting story. So I'm currently in Israel. This morning I went to meet the CEO of, I can say the name, of Keller Williams in Israel. So he owns the market
Yeah.
center here, and he brought a friend of his from the U.S., from New Jersey, who's also with KW, and we had a very interesting conversation, very friendly conversation. Not as competitors, not hey, you're better, I'm
Sure.
better, nothing of that sort.
Right.
And at one point, I asked him, what kind of infrastructure do you need to put in place if you wanted to add 1,000 agents right now here in this market? And he
In
said, you know
Israel.
what?
Yeah.
In Israel. But it probably applies to the US or anywhere else. So he said, for 1,000 agents, we probably need like 40 or 50 locations, so offices. We need an average of 2.5 people per location. So we'll need to hire 100 people. It'll take us, I don't know, a couple of years to find those 50 locations, get them ready, all of that.
Yeah.
And then he asked me, like, what would it take real to add 1,000 agents? And I said, zero. We wouldn't even need to buy another server. So just last
Yeah.
quarter,
Yeah.
we added 1,500 agents. And for him, I think that was a huge aha moment, because I think that at the end of the day, an office is just a way to deliver utilities to agents. And
Right.
if you find a different way to deliver those services or utilities to agents, then maybe it can work and you don't have to go to an office. I think that if you think about work in general, and the major employers of the world right now, Twitter, Facebook, all of those companies were used in the past 3 years to work remotely. And it doesn't mean that people received less support or people were less productive. So I think that there is a place in the world right now to different kind of models, and there is no like this thing is the best.
Right.
But it was an interesting conversation today, which I just saw how his eyes just opened immediately and said, okay, like this is mind blowing to think that there's so much work needed to onboard 1,000 agents in this model versus that model.
So what is something that your eyes have been open to? I know it's crazy because when you and I first met a little over 2 years ago, the company was at right around 2,000 agents. Now we have 12,000 agents. Canada was opening right when we came over, and now it's pretty much every province in Canada for the most part, and there's unique challenges there. Almost every state in the United States. So, what's something that maybe you wish you could go back to Tamir 3 years ago and like, hey, bro, be ready for this? Like, what's something that maybe you weren't thinking of that has become an issue that you're finding solutions to, but maybe people aren't aware of? And because everybody now looks at EXP and then they look at Real and they go like, oh, cool. Well, yeah, I'm just going to do that. It's like, well, it's not really that easy.
It's not that easy. It's actually very difficult. This is why I have a lot of appreciation for EXP and other companies in the field. I've made it a rule for myself many years ago not to regret anything. And what you're asking me is basically like, what do you regret? So honestly, I don't regret anything. I think that at some point, probably at the beginning of 2021, we just knew that there's a wave of growth coming our way, and we
Right.
we just need to get prepared, and we need to put the infrastructure in place and hire the right people, but it came sooner and much more strongly than we anticipated. So maybe that's one thing and the consequence was that a lot of agents felt some pain for about a year or less than a year, just because we were not
Yeah.
prepared accordingly. And we did our best to communicate it to the agents that were joining and say, hey, we're not perfect. We're not, like, a lot of things are under construction. But I think that if there's one thing that we could have done better in recent years was just have that understanding of what's coming, and how fast and how strong it's going to be. But it's also part of the magic. Like I think that
Yeah.
people like you that joined us, you truly feel like a partner because you helped us build this business.
Right.
And I think that every agent that joined in the past 2 3 years feel like they contributed to building this thing together. So I think that it also has a magic to it.
No, I like that. So I was asked to give a talk in a church congregation one time on New Year's. And it was like, well, what are we going to, because church congregations generally, like you just go there to beat yourself up, right? And so the whole premise of my talk was for that coming year, I think it was like 2020 or 19 or whatever, I'm not going to focus on any of my weaknesses. I'm only going to focus on my strengths. And I just wanted to see what it would do to my psyche and to my personal growth and my connection with the universe and all those things. If I just said, I'm not going to beat myself up for the things I do wrong. I'm just going to go like, all right, well, cool. Let's keep learning. So what have been some of the best, like, what have you done right? Like looking back the last couple of years, what are you like, you know what? We really nailed that one. I've got a couple in mind for you, but I'm just curious what yours are when you look back and go like, we did this part right.
So let me give you maybe a philosophical answer to that. I think that the one thing we did right, and we never strayed away from it. Like this was the North Star for us. It was always there when it came to financial decisions, when it came to difficult decisions, because sometimes you have to decide whether you're doing something for the benefit of the company, and sometimes it's for the benefit of the agents or the clients of the company.
Right.
I think that one thing that was always clear to us, to the team, to management, to investors, to our board, was that agents come first in this company. Agents always come first, and we always do what's best for the agents, because if you do what's best for the agents, long term, you will benefit from that. And I think that that kind of long-term thinking, coupled with the agents are always in the center and we always do what's best for them, I think that that has led us to taking the right turns, making the right decisions, providing maybe the right culture or the right sense of partnership with the agents. So I think that's one thing that at the end of the day, it trickles down to a lot of smaller decisions and product decisions, support decisions, business decisions, model. But when this is what's guiding you, I think it leads you to do what's right for the people that you serve.
No, I love that. I'm a big Ted Lasso fan. I don't know if you've ever watched that show, but it's about a European soccer team. They bring over this American football coach. It's a whole thing. But they were playing in a lower league, and then they get put up to the bigger league. And it's like the players they could acquire at this league weren't the players they could acquire at that league. So I look back and I go, I don't know what the conversation was, but when Pritesh came into the world, and I've said this before, like when Taylor and I met you, it was amazing, right? And then we met Pritesh, and we were like, dude, he knows what he's doing. So like Pritesh was one of those early stage individuals that you brought in to where not only did we give Pritesh the credit for just being like he's an awesome person and he builds amazing things, but it also gave us a lot of confidence in you as a leader that you could attract that type of person into your world. So early stage Pritesh, and then later stage, I think Sharon was a big, you and I had some conversations. I didn't even know who he was, but I'm not as much of an industry insider as some real estate guys in my position would be. I pretty much stay in my own lane and do my own thing. And then I met Sharon, and then now I've gotten to know him really well. And I'm like, man. So talk a little bit about those guys, and I know there's a handful of others as well, but the talent that you bring in your role is super important to advance that North Star of increasing the quality and the lives of the agents. So Pritesh, Sharon, and everybody else, I mean, what has talent acquisition meant to you?
Yeah, I think that, naturally you have more interactions with people that are in management or leadership positions. But I think that at Real, we have so many amazing people, and some of them have been here for many years. I mean, you're probably familiar with Joel, for example, from the onboarding team. Joel has been here for, I think, 6 years.
Yeah.
So I think that people always ask me like, what are you good at? And I tell them, I'm not a good manager. I'm not like, I don't think that there's anything I'm exceptionally good at. The only thing that I am truly good at is understanding people and spotting talent. I think that this is kind of my forte, and that's maybe what I bring to the company. So, by the way, you mentioned Sharon. I also didn't know Sharon beforehand. I didn't know what kind of a big deal he was and how influential
Yeah.
he was. We were introduced through a third party, and from the very first conversation, I sensed that he had this amazing balance between really strong knowledge and a huge heart. And this is
Yeah.
exactly what real is. Like real is an amazing combination of logic and heart. And before I even knew who he was, I said, okay, this is someone I want to partner up with. Same goes for Pritesh. I mean, Pritesh is, in my eyes, the most outstanding tech person in the real estate space. I mean, just put him in front of anyone else, he's better. So I think that at the end of the day, it's your ability to look at someone and say, okay, that person has what it takes from a professional perspective, but also from um, an emotional quality perspective. And this is a person I would like to build something with and partner now for 10, 20, 30 years.
Right.
Um, and I'll add one more layer to it. Because Real is growing so rapidly, you have to find people that are resilient, people that can evolve over time, because the company a year ago is very different from the company today, and the company in a year from now
Right.
will be and you need to find those individuals that are able to evolve and adapt. And we have hired in the past people that were great for a certain phase, but then a year later,
Right.
the company is like 4 times bigger, and they could no longer perform just because the change was so rapid. So you you have to count on the fact that everybody at Real are people that can move extremely fast and evolve into roles that are getting bigger and bigger every day, actually.
Yeah.
And I mean, we should give them a lot of credit for that.
Well, and I think 100%. And I think you deserve a lot of credit. You also deserve some grace. And I know you don't enjoy talking about yourself. There were hires along the way that are not still with the company. And I saw this Instagram meme, and I literally shared it with my kids because it said one of the things I didn't realize when I was a kid is I was watching my parents grow up too. And it's like, you're the CEO of a publicly traded real estate company. Every decision you make should be the greatest decision ever made. And they should never, I mean, there should never be a time where anyone's brought in that for some reason doesn't work out in the long run. But I think there is that, to Dorothy, it's not Kansas anymore. And to Kansas, she's not Dorothy anymore, right? Like the Tamir I met 2 years ago and the Tamir that sits before me today are two relatively different people. The Joe you met 2 years ago and the Joe that sits before you today, two relatively different people. So how do you, I think for anyone growing a team, needing a broker, a licensed broker, needing an assistant, how do you find people who are talented with a propensity to growth? Like, how is that? And it's maybe a little bit hard to define, but you obviously now look for people that you're like, okay, they're great now and they will be great in the future. What
Yeah,
are some of the things you look for?
I think you get better with time. I mean, I've interviewed, I don't know, hundreds, maybe thousands of people in the past 10 years for different positions. I think I gotten better. Obviously, I made a lot of mistakes over time. And the thing with being publicly traded is that there's a spotlight all the time
Yeah.
on you. So every new executive hire is announced, and when they leave, you have to announce it as well. You live quarter by quarter. Everybody knows the performance of the company. Like everything is out there, and you're being examined on each and every decision.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that to say that it's scary in any way. It's I think you have to develop a certain confidence in yourself, not necessarily the confidence that, hey, I'm really good at this, but the confidence to actually make mistakes. Like, if we make
Yeah.
a mistake, it's not the end of the world. It's okay. the sun will shine tomorrow, everything will be okay. So I think that the ability to spot good talent is something that probably was built up in my last 47 years of being in this world. But
I thought you
I
were
think
still
that
in your
what
30s. I didn't know you were 47.
I am, I just used 47, as a reference, but
Yeah.
thank you. But my line of thought just
So talk to me about this. How was your military background? Taylor and I are like obsessed with that. We cornered you one time and just hounded you about it. But
yeah.
what role? Because in Israel, military service is required. In the United States, it's still voluntary unless we're under draft. So, like, what role did your military background play? Because you had leadership experience there. Like,
Yeah.
uniquely, like 2 years ago when we came over to Real, we weren't at war. Like, the market was great. Interest rates were like 0%, right? Now we're in a 7% interest rate market. Agents are struggling like they never have before. There's more competitors in the brokerage environment. So, like, what did your military service teach you that kind of bleeds into your leadership as a publicly traded corporate officer?
I think that what it taught me is that anything is possible, or nothing is impossible. Like if you can think about it, if you can dream about it, you can actually do it. And it's not like a cliche or something. It truly is. Like I served in a unit that was doing things above anyone's imagination. And you learn that with practice, with methodologies, with the right tools, with the right technologies, with the right people alongside you, you can really accomplish anything. So I think that my military service days just provided me a lot of kind of confidence, and also the understanding, this is the business world. And I'm not trying to make it small, but at the end of the day, it's not life or death, or life and death. Like in the military, yes, sometimes you face situations that if you do make a mistake, then it's game over. It's game over for you. It's game over for your friends that are, next to you. But in the business world, sometimes you do have opportunities to correct. And maybe it boils down to a financial loss, but nobody will lose their lives or, an arm or a leg. So I think it just gave me a good perspective on just not to be scared, and just have the confidence to make decisions, and maybe sometimes make decisions under immense pressure. Like in the battlefield,
Right.
you have to make a lot of decisions in split seconds under a lot of pressure. Sometimes you're being shot at. Sometimes you're concerned about getting discovered, and you have to act very fast. And when COVID hit,
Yeah.
I think I was super early to tell everybody. Back then, we had an office in New York. I was super early to tell everybody, hey guys, next week the world is going to change. You shouldn't come to the office, and this is the plan. Like, this is what we should be doing. I cut my salary by 20% instantaneously before COVID even hit the US. So I think we reacted very well to it. And maybe that has to do with, the ability to predict situations in the battlefield.
So you've got a unique responsibility in that you report to a board, a corporate board, a publicly traded company. You talk to really high level operators, and solo agents in random states across the United States and provinces of Canada look to you for your advice. So how do you, like, we could get super tactical, but from a 30,000 foot view, like, how do you switch hats? Because there is that, when you're talking board about 30,000 foot view global real estate economics, and when you're talking to an agent who just needs to put some deals together so that they can pay their house payment, the conversation's a little bit different.
I'll answer that question, but let me tell you a story. When we were super tiny, we were a private company. We were valued at, I don't know, $15 million. There were always other tech companies that my investors invested in that I was looking up to. And those folks were, they just raised that $300 million valuation, 500 million, this company went public. I was always kind of looking up to those CEOs and said, hey, when I'm at that point, I'll have so many, or I wouldn't have
no problems,
no problems, or very few problems, and their life is probably so easy and it's so great. But at some point when you get there, you realize that it never ends. Like it never ends. There are always struggles. There are always challenges. You always try to accomplish something. And the reason why I'm telling you that is when you think about board members or executives, at the end of the day, it's people. So I think that what keeps me, you were talking about changing hats. I don't need to change hat because you just stay human. And when you're human, and when you remember that person that's sitting on a publicly traded board and that agent that closes 8 transactions a year, they're not different. Maybe they have a different kind of experience. Maybe they focused on different things in life. Maybe they have different interests. But at the end of the day, they're human. They're business people. They can contribute in different ways. And you just have to stay human. So I think that this is what allows me to kind of change or not change the hat that I'm wearing.
So answer this for me. I don't know if I've ever told you before, but I went through a bout for maybe a year and a half of claustrophobia, where it was a stupid ride at Disney World that I got trapped in, and then I got an MRI, and it was like those two things combined to where I couldn't even ride in an Uber. I have a point here. What I've noticed in real estate is there's almost this digital claustrophobia that agents can deal with from time to time, where they just want to know they have a physical location to go to. And so Taylor and I have kept our brick and mortar open in Las Vegas so that an agent can just bring a client in and meet in our conference room, or agents visiting from other cities can, they have a place to call home. What is it that agents don't understand about the digital environment in real estate that actually can solve their problems? Because as you mentioned, historically, it's kind of the wise sage sitting in the corner that answers all of the problems. There's much better ways to do it than the traditional brick and mortar office. So what are some of the things that maybe agents don't understand about a digital brokerage that actually can solve some of the problems they face on a day-to-day basis?
I think that on a high level, I think that the next couple of years will be a transitory period in our industry. In 20 years from now, most agents will be connected or affiliated with non-brick and mortar models. What's happening right now, it's not necessarily what's going to happen in the future. And by the way, the conversations that we had 9 or 10 years ago when we were just starting were very different, because people were focusing more on, hey, how can you deliver all those services without having an office? Right now, people are more used to, okay, this is possible. So I think that when you think about being in an office, what is it exactly that you're getting in the office? Is that training? Is that support? Is that masterminding classes, paperwork, you name it? All of those things can be delivered and much easier with no offices. You can have access to all of those documents, all of those trainings, all of those people. I'm talking to investors a lot, and we're talking about community and community building. And very often the conclusion is that when you go to an office and you want to collaborate, you're confined to the knowledge of the people within that office. You go to the office, those are the people that you can interact with. Sometimes they compete with you, sometimes they don't want to share exactly. But when you come to a non-brick and mortar environment where you have 12,000 agents, for example, across the country, all of a sudden you can tap into knowledge of people that you didn't have access to before when you were actually going to the office. So I think that, yes, for some agents, there's a psychological barrier of, I was used to doing things in a certain way, and maybe once a year, I will need immediate support. So I will just drive to the office, do my thing, and maybe it's worth having an office for that purpose. But I think that the more people will get used to interacting with non-brick and mortar models, that fear will probably be kind of it'll disappear. But as I said, it's a transition phase right now.
Yeah. Well, and Jake makes a good point. He's watching. He commented. He just said, I think cloud-based brokerages make a ton of sense. Like digital brokerages make a lot of sense. Teams, like we're pretty big on getting our agents in here as a team, but as an independent agent, there's so much value in the virtual world. What are you telling? Like, what's the message right now to real estate agents in 2023? I follow a couple of people. You probably follow the same guys on Twitter, X, whatever it's called. Steve came out today and he just said, like I'm big enough to admit I was wrong when I was wrong. I thought rates would be in the 5s or 6s by now, and they're not, right? So I read a statistic that said 80% of real estate agents have never practiced real estate in an environment where interest rates are above 7%, which is crazy. Yeah. I read this morning, interest rates are at a 20-year high. Like I've been in for 21 years. So like I'm a seasoned vet. I had that 1 year of before rates started to drop. But what are we telling agents right now? How do people stay the course? What's some of the conversations you're having as far as we can paint it whatever way we want, but it's harder to sell a $500,000 house when interest rates are 7% than when they were 3%. So right. What are some of the conversations you're having or guidance you're giving?
So a few things. One, we and I feel a lot of pain from agents across the country right now. And I mean, it cannot be ignored. It's painful. It's affecting a lot of businesses and a lot of families around the country. At the same time, people are still buying and selling homes. So think about, Q2, for example, of 2023, all of the companies in our industry were posting a drop in revenue. The only company that was actually growing was Real. So I'm not saying that to say, hey, we're great. I'm just saying that even in a down market, there's an opportunity to do better than the next person. So there's always an opportunity to do better. Having said that, if I'm trying to analyze where the industry is going, I think that it's going to be an extremely cold winter. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. I think that the fourth quarter is going to be brutal. I think that it's going to be somewhat of a cool spring, and it's probably going to be a solid summer. So if you can sustain the next 6 months, that's great. I think that internally at Real, we're constantly thinking about, okay, how can we help our agents go through those next difficult months? And we are coming up with a couple of initiatives, aside from training and everything that Sharon is doing with the down market playbook and everything that is bringing tremendous value. I also think that people now need access to money. Like the bottom line is people need money. So how can we as a company help that? And I think that if you think about what agents are building here, we are a platform, and agents build assets on top of that platform. Right. So what I mean is, your past transactions are an asset because it can help us predict your future transactions. Your pending GCI is an asset because we can underwrite that and say, okay, with a high degree of certainty over the next 60 days, you will have that amount of income. Your equity that you accumulated is an asset. Revenue share is an asset. And what I mean by that is we can take all of those assets and underwrite them and say, hey, Joe, based on all of this information that we have, we can get you access to cash today. And I think that this is bottom line what agents need right now is access to money, access to credit. So we're thinking about both educating our agents, giving them the best kind of support possible, especially these days, and also giving them bottom line access to resources or cash or credit. And we will be announcing something very soon. But as I said, I think that we've been through almost a year and a half of difficult market. It's going to get a little tougher, but we're almost at the end of this down market. And
cycle.
If you made it so far, just hang in there. Try to push forward, and it'll be okay. Like I was in the market in 2007, 8, 9, 10, and was actually benefiting from it, to be honest. But
right. There's opportunity in every market.
Yeah.
So we've got just a few minutes left. Talk about, I remember coming home from a UNLV football game, and back before the stadium was built on the Strip, the college football stadium was like 4 miles from the Strip. And I remember saying, like, we saw all these people walking because they couldn't get a taxi cab. And I was like, we should give them a ride and just say, hey, it's $100 and we'll give you a ride to the Strip. Little did I know I created Uber. Like they owe me something, right? And then 5 years later, Uber came out, and I remember hearing it and going like, I would never hop in somebody's car. Like I felt safety in the taxi cab industry for some reason. And it was just used to, you just walk out and you hail a cab. And now I never ride in taxi cabs. Like even in New York, the taxi cab capital of the world, I order an Uber. When I first heard of the agent-owned, publicly traded, revenue share-based business model 5-6 years ago, I did not think it would work. My whole thing was like, just go sell houses. Like, why are you worried about what company your friends are at or whatever? And it turns out I was wrong. Like there's so much value in agents having multiple streams of revenue. And we're seeing that right now, and not even globally, like just in our own office, we have agents who are like, my production is down 50%, but I'm supplementing my income and being able to support my family through the agent attraction efforts that I did over the last year and a half. I'm now able to pay my car payment or house payment through this additional revenue stream. So maybe you've got a really cool outlook on what revenue share is, because so many people will say, do you run an MLM or do you? And so like, but the way you talk about revenue share and what it does for agents, I think is good for people to hear.
Yeah, and by the way, you know how many people thought that they invented Uber before Uber invented Uber?
Well, there's one right here. Yeah.
Yeah, you're not alone.
Yeah.
You know, when we felt that the market is going to shift, I think it was around March of 2022, I went out and told our agents, listen, the market is going to change. I don't care if you never attract a single agent. I do care if you're not able to provide for your families. And what we are giving you is an opportunity to hedge your business. And rev share is an opportunity to actually hedge your business, because if your business goes down and you supplement that with revenue share, you still can provide for your family. And I was trying to preach that for a few months. I mean, hopefully a few agents listen to me, but at the end of the day, revenue share is not about attracting others. It's not about growing the company. It's about helping yourself in good times and in bad times. It's again, it's an asset that you're building. And I think that now more than ever, people understand how important it is not to put all of the eggs into one basket. So at Real, you can have revenue share, you can have the equity that you're accumulating, you can be a part of the title JV and just make money out of title services as well. I think that those market conditions demonstrate why you need to have multiple streams of income, because it's not about pride. It's not about, hey, I don't want to be salesy and reach out to people and tell them to come to the company that I'm with. It's about being responsible with your business and with your family even, and just being at a place where you have that opportunity. I think you have to take advantage of it, and hopefully more people will. And I don't care if people will never attract a single agent to the company. I just want them to not hurt so much when the market is down.
That I remember the first time you and I met in person was Inman 2 years ago. It would have been like June or July. And I don't even know if you remember this. So we went, there was the Battle of the Brokerages. And then that night there was like a get together for real agents. And I remember the comment you made to me is like, how do we help these agents provide for their families? And that was where your mindset was at amidst the Las Vegas Strip and all the big things happening. What does Real look like in 2 years? Like what, and we can kind of end on this, like where is this company in 2 years? There's increasing numbers of companies looking at the agent-owned revenue share model, and they're trying to tweak it and do different things. What does this company look like in 2 years? When 2025, when when I'm in Israel and we're like walking the streets? Like, what are we talking about that's been accomplished in the last from 2023 to 2025?
I think we're entering the most exciting 2 years in the company's life, just because of all of the things that we're working on, especially on the technology side. I think that in 2 years, people will understand like the huge difference that Real has built over other brokerages, both in the offering to agents and the offering to our agents' clients, or mainly buyers right now. So I think that, right now technology doesn't really play a significant role when agents try to choose whether to go with that brokerage or this brokerage. I think that in 2 years, Real will have a game-changing technology to offer both the agents and our agents' clients. And for me, at the end of the day, we continue to do things that are for our agents and build more and more tools for them. But I also think that if you truly care about your agents, you have to care about their clients. And how can we give you and give every agent at Real something that will position them in a way that every consumer will want to work with them? Because if you work with a Real agent, you have access to this technology that's a game changer in the home buying journey or experience. And
Right.
I think that in 2 years, everybody will understand that. But I think that the next 2 years are just going to be filled with a lot of innovation and things that are just going to blow people's mind on how is this even possible at a brokerage. And it'll probably start in October when we announce something big that we've been working on at Rise, our annual conference. I think that at that point, people will understand, okay, this company truly thinks differently, and we have capabilities that nobody else can achieve just because we own the technology that we use. So, aside from Leo, that's exciting, and Leo will continue to grow, and very soon Leo will be able to pre-qualify people for mortgages and other stuff. I think that very soon people will be just excited about what we're building on the tech side.
Well, I hope people picked up on the nuance there. If I know anything about Tamir, it is very simply this. He did not refer to improving the lives of agents and consumers. The way he talked about the real estate consumer is that those consumers are the clients of his agents. And I think that that's such an important distinction to make. And it's one of the things I love about our relationship, about you as a leader, is there's so much insecurity on behalf of the agent that companies with technology are going to use it to replace them. And I think let's kind of end on this. For you, it's not about replacing the agent, it's about enhancing the agent. And why is that such an important element? Because you could say, oh, we really hope to help agents and we hope to go direct to consumer. But for you, getting to the consumer is always through the lives of your agents.
So if we go back to what I said at the beginning of the conversation, when you asked me what am I good at, and I said the only thing I'm probably good at is understanding people, it's extremely clear to me that as long as it's humans that are buying and selling homes, they should be assisted by other humans. So I have no doubt that agents are here to stay. And just because of the human element, even, when you think about technology can probably replace most of the actions that agents are performing during a transaction. But it should work for the agents, not to replace the agents, just because there's such a strong emotional and human component in a home, in buying a home. And I think that will never go away.
100%. Well, grateful for you. Grateful you took the time to sit down with us, guys. Listen to this podcast. Tamir is always available, at least on social media. So he's a great follow. There are so many amazing agents at the company, and Tamir does a really good job of broadcasting some of the work that these agents are doing in the creation of content and the highlighting of consumers and some of the things that the company's doing. He does a really good job. So I would encourage people to go to follow him. Tamir, I'm grateful for you, grateful for your willingness to hop on with us.
Thank you for having me, and thank you everybody for tuning in. Thanks a lot.